Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Simply Trade Roundup. My name's Annik. I'll be your host today, as I am always. Welcome back if you've been listening. And if you're new here, hi. We talk about trade. I have trade professionals on every single episode and choose certain topics that I find interesting, or maybe sometimes I don't, but I think they would be beneficial to you. But today, I have a wonderful guest whom I've met multiple times. His name is Ken Peters. He's the president at MIC US and the director of commercial operations in North America.
Yeah.
So we're going to discuss beautiful things today, such as the global trade management software prep and much more. And I know he's excited, even though he might not be fully showing that. But deep inside, I know he's excited for it. So welcome, Ken.
I was pulled in, I was dragged into this. So yes, here we go. We're ready to go.
You had no choice. Guys,
I've turned you down many times. So,
so here you are.
Here we are. Ta-da-da.
I know. Very exciting. Well, let's start first. So I obviously looked at the PowerPoint, which is so fun. I think we have to give Alison some credit. Can we do that?
100%.
Right? Alison some credit. Obviously, you guys can't see that, but that's okay. I'm just going off of it. That's kind of where I got my questions from. But you guys, as the listeners, will get some great information on what to do before you install such a software onto your business or, corporation or whatever, and what your team must do to prepare, because the steps are not easy. You can't just implement a software onto a mess. Let's just say that. And I know Ken is going to go over that. But let's start. Ken, I have to say, you're a first-time grandpa. I have to bring that up.
Thank you. Yes, I am a first-time grandpa. So,
congratulations.
Which is really awesome. Yeah, the little guy's 7 months old now. So he was born in July. We get to try to see him every single day that I possibly can. So it's the next step in life. So it's pretty cool. So absolutely love that little guy.
I love it. And it just shows that you have more to do than just tell people that you need to prep before you implement software. But anyways, let's dive into the implementation process. So I know this is kind of a broad question, but before you implement such a software, what should trade teams do? What's like the most important thing that comes to your mind?
Well, one most important thing is data. One of the most important things is data. So you have to get kind of everything that you want to do within the GTM platform. Like say, if you're just doing denied party screening or you're doing classification, make sure that you're getting all your data in a line, right? So don't give us on the GTM side, don't give us vendors or partners that you don't use anymore that are inactive, right? So clean up your data before you bring it on board. But then also, I think one of the main things too is make sure you have a process in mind, because you can't just implement what you've done in the past and throw it over onto the GTM side and say, all right, we're just going to do the same thing, but now we're going to do it over here. Because if your processes are broken on the first side, then now you just made it faster to make mistakes on the other side, right? So make sure you get your processes down and what you really want to accomplish in your GTM application.
Now, you mentioned that the process might be broken on their side. What if they think that a software can fix that process? Is there such a thing, or should they clean their act up right before they come to you? What if they come to you with a broken process?
We can clean up some things, but we can't clean up everything, right? So definitely try to make sure you have your processes and your flows, how you want them to interact with the GTM software. So again, the GTM software can do some things, but it's not going to do everything for you.
Yeah. You, in the PowerPoint, there is a saying, it says, if your systems are emailing Excel files to each other, you're not automating, you're just creating digital chaos.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Somebody probably typically creating that Excel spreadsheet on the back end. So there's hands on keyboards that are creating the Excel, and then they got to email it over to somebody else who then has to get that out of their email and push it into a GTM solution. You can do it that way. A lot of times that is probably the most cost benefit way, is to kind of just send Excel spreadsheets back and forth, but that's not true automation, right? True automation is when your ERP system is speaking to the GTM platform and you're automatically sending data via, SFTP sites, or you're using web-based XML files to send stuff automatically, like using APIs. So you really want to try to automate the process as much as possible because one, it eliminates errors, right? So the more chances that we have to get fingers off of keyboards, the better it is for the process as a whole. Because now you just eliminate the opportunity or the chances to make errors.
Yeah. So you mentioned a lot of words, a lot of
What
like
words?
abbreviations,
Oh
you
yeah, I
know?
do it all. Sorry, the GTM. Well, the GTM, another abbreviation, right? So the Global Trade Management space, and actually just compliance space as a whole, talk in acronyms all the time. So sorry.
I know. And that is why there might be people out there that do not know, which
Okay.
one of them might also be me. I am familiar with some of them, but not
Yep.
all of them.
All
So
right.
if there's a business coming to you, let's just break this down. If there's a business saying, look, we want to automate some of our processes, how would you go about it if they're questioning you? Are you looking at their business and seeing all their processes and telling them, look, this is what we could automate? Or would you rather have them say, look, this is what we're struggling with. We want to automate this exact process. Like, what is the initial step?
Typically, we want to start off small. So there's, I think, one of my slides in the
Yeah,
PowerPoint that you
it
had
does.
gone through. It's like, don't do the Big Bang Theory because it typically doesn't work, right? Big Bang Theory meaning I want to do denied party screening and classification and free trade agreement rules analysis and solicitation for those free trade agreements and doing it all at once. That's really not kind of the best approach to go about it. You want to start small, do like a denied party screening application first, or maybe do classification first. Like, so get most of the master data items down that feed into other data points, right? So like free trade agreements, you have to have your vendors information, you have to have part information, you have to have HS information, maybe values, right? So all that stuff kind of relies on other things in classification, right? Most GTM providers have like a classification database. So get your classification items down first before you say implement an FTA agreement, because the FTA stuff is going to utilize and want to grab the HS information from your part database, right? Denied party screening, same way, right? You don't want to solicit any of your vendors that are maybe on a denied party screening list. So button up the denied party screening and the classification stuff first, and then build out the other things, right? Doesn't mean you can't go the other route, but it's probably not the best way. At least that's what I've seen in my experience.
Is that what it means when you're talking about clean your data like you're hosting the in-laws?
No, clean your data like you're hosting the in-laws comes from basically getting rid of all the junk in your database, right? So again, if you have a lot of tariff numbers that are out there and they're all like 11111, or you got a bunch of zeros, or you have parts that are inactive and you're not going to use them anymore, you don't need to send that over to me, right? So clean up that stuff first, and then you can send me the stuff that you want to actually store and you're going to use, right? An active database, something that is active parts that you're currently selling and you're going to utilize throughout the process. So that's really what it is. You want to clean up your stuff first, right? Because if you're sending me all bad stuff, then again, now it's just like, all right, well, now all that bad stuff is on my side. So we haven't really cleaned up anything, right? Some solutions will help you clean up that stuff, right? If you send incorrect HS numbers, we can validate to make sure those numbers aren't like they're not in a database somewhere, right? They're not an HS number for a specific country, and then we can kind of weed that stuff out. But if you have everything cleaned up, it'll go a lot smoother in the long run.
And now let's say, okay, they clean it up. You say, okay,
Yep.
it's all good to go. We can install the software, and it'll streamline some of your processes and make things easier. Who's operating that? Is it on their end or is it on your end? Like, because obviously someone has to still
so
check
it's
on the
typically
software.
typically we're at least on our side, right? On the MIC side, we are strictly the software side, right? So we don't do, say, managed services, right? So if you send me an HS number, our system will help you, say, classify that part within the database, but someone needs to go in and look at it and make sure that it's accurate, right? So we don't, we just provide the software side of it house.
Right.
So it sounded like you were talking about more managed services.
Yeah. So how do you think the team should be set up on their end? Because obviously you guys have it figured out. You know what to do. You know how to help them in the initial step. Yeah. But how do they continue these processes, like making sure that the software is working correctly, which it should?
Yeah, I mean, well, that all goes down to really testing to begin with. So, probably most implementations go wrong at testing. So, clients or potential clients don't give enough time and effort to the testing spot. So that is a really big thing. When it comes to, oh my God, I totally forgot the first part of your question. So say it again.
I said that how should they, if once the software is installed, how should
Uh-huh.
the team manage the software? Because I'm going to lead with one of the quotes
Well,
that
they're
you
not.
have in the,
Well, let's see. Okay, go on. Because they're not necessarily managing the software; they're managing the process through the software, right? So
right.
we manage the software on the back end, right? So if there's
Uh-huh.
any change in regulations or HS numbers, anything like that, we manage that on the back end. But the client is going to manage the actual process, right? So the process of classifying, the process of creating an import entry.
Right.
So that's really what the software will do, but it automate more of that process for them.
I see. So when you say get everyone on the bus, does that apply here?
Yeah, well, kind of. So everybody on the bus is more like on an implementation side as well, because you're going to need, well, one, you need buy-in from upper management, right? Because basically they're paying for it all, right? But then you're going to have, if you're doing implementations and you want to integrate, right, you're going to need IT on the bus. So IT needs to know what's going to happen and what are the benefits of having the GTM solution. Compliance needs to be on the bus, right? Anybody in the compliance department needs to be there because those are the ones that are typically utilizing the application. All right. And it's going to help them, again, do their jobs a little bit easier. Logistics, import, export, all these parties, right? Everybody needs to be on the bus. So they have to be going in the same direction. You can't have one person going, well, we don't want to do it this way or we don't want to do it another way. Everybody has to have a singular focus on this is where we're marching to and going in the same direction. I
Yeah.
hope that answers your question.
No, it did. It did. No, it did. I'm going down the list because
You're going down
we
the
have
list.
one world, many rules, and there's so many rules in this world.
That's true.
But I'm sure there's a lot of other rules in the software world. So how does that apply to companies?
So, well, many rules, right, across the world, right? So depending on what country you're importing or exporting out of, they're going to have all different types of regulations for that, specifically for that country, right? So typical GTM software will have like a core process, which basically every country runs off of, right? I got import, I got export. But then you need to get specific when it comes down to the individual countries. So UK does it slightly different, and we have to communicate differently to their government officials or their government software versus, say, Germany, right? Or versus Austria, versus Brazil versus the US. So everybody kind of has a little tweak on what they need. And that's what I mean when I was saying, like, it's one world, but there's many different things, right? So you need to have a software that can communicate to multiple different government agencies and multiple different countries. So that's what really I meant. So the same process aren't going to work for everything.
Yeah, and then we already talked about the human factor, which is okay. So essentially, I'm going to explain this real quick. I should have done this in the beginning, but
Sure.
there was 10 things, right, that you had on your
Yeah.
list, I believe, and you counted down to the first. That's the number one reason what to look at when implementing software, and the number 4 was the human factor, which I guess we've been addressing that a lot.
Yeah.
But in what way, it says you can buy software, but you can't buy buy-in. What does
Right.
that mean?
Well, so typically people just want to do things the same way that they've been doing it, right? A lot of people are resistant to change, It's like, someone's been doing their process and they've been doing it for 30 years and it's not broke and it works just fine. At least that's what they think, right? So the human factor is that everybody's not going to buy in, right? Or everybody's going to, well, you want them to buy in, but they're all going to be resistant to change. It's just natural human behavior. You just have to make sure that you get everybody who's resistant to it. You need to celebrate the small wins. So like if they're doing a process within the new GTM software and maybe they do a denied party screening and it comes back fine and everything looks good, right? And they've done the process. It's a small win. Congratulate them, celebrate it, right? Show them that everything's going in the right direction. I'm trying to think of the human factor is just getting people to change. So, and the way to do
Yeah.
that again is just getting them well, I know I say getting them on the bus, but you gotta get their buy-in that it's going to make it better. Again, like I mentioned earlier, right? Communicate often to them, do lots of training, right? Train everybody, show them how the system works, make sure that they know that this is a better process than what they've done before, right? Because if again, if you're not training people and you're not getting them to use it, then you have this shiny tool that's just sitting out there and no one's using it, right? So
Yeah. And
train,
that
train.
brings me up to a question. So I know you insure people, a software will ultimately help you just, do things in a better way, streamline it, maybe do things more secure. And obviously companies pay the price for softwares. Software is very expensive. Can you assure, I don't know if you can assure this, but when a company pays so much money for a software, I'm not just saying MIC, I'm talking about,
Yeah,
other softwares just in general. Do you think it'll benefit them at the end? The
yeah,
amount they're spending, they're getting everything back, if not more?
yeah. I do. Yes, you may not see it the first year, but you'll definitely see it the second year and beyond. It's like GTM solutions, right? So there's really for on the money side, right? There's really two sides of it, right? So one side is you're trying to avoid risk avoidance. So that's like your denied party screening, making sure you have your classifications in order, right? You're filing things in a timely fashion with, say, the US government. So you're kind of, again, you're avoiding risk on that side. So that's really that's not hard money. That's soft money that you're kind of savings, right? You're like putting off getting fined, so to speak, right? But then other portions of GTM solutions are hard money, right? So hard money meaning I am leveraging a free trade agreement. So now instead of paying 12% rate of duty, I'm paying 0% rate of duty or a reduced rate of duty, right? So that's hard money that you can see that goes right to the bottom line that you can show your CEO or your CFO. It's like, hey, listen, this GTM solution is working well because now we can solicit for certificates of origin. We can prove that we can, go and get a 0% rate of duty from the US government. And now we just eliminated, say, whatever 5% rate of duty on all the stuff that we import from Mexico. Foreign trade zones, the same way. Now, it's all about either eliminating duty because you're bringing something into a foreign trade zone and then you're exporting it completely out of the country, or you're deferring that duty payment, right? So the money now sits in my bank account versus me giving it right over to the US government, right? And for a foreign trade zone, I don't have to give the duty until I actually take it out of my zone and bring it into the commerce. So I can have it sit in my zone for a year, 2 years. So that just means all that duty money just sat in my bank account versus the government's bank account. So,
Right. So that's probably one of the reasons why GTM matters to businesses or corporation, right? Because I
yeah,
know that you also mentioned that it speeds up cross-border trade and fulfillment, which
yeah,
ultimately saves you money, I think.
ultimately. Yeah. You know, I,
Enable.
sorry. No, no. So I look at it, I look at it this way, right? So you have an end-to-end process, right? So you're moving stuff from a warehouse in the US and you're moving it to a warehouse in Mexico. So you know how long it takes to move it from your warehouse to the port. And, you kind of have an idea of what your customs broker will do. But on the other side, once it gets to the other side, right, I know how long it takes to get from, again, like a port in Mexico to my warehouse, and then how long it takes to get to the shelf. I can know those things, right? The pieces in the middle is where US or the customs authorities come into play, right? I don't know sometimes how long it's going to take to get through that, right? But if I have all my compliance pieces all buttoned up, right? I've proven to those authorities like, hey, listen, this is what you're going to get. You're going to get this type of commercial invoice. It's going to look the same. The HS number is going to be in the same spot. Everything's going to be kind of unique or not unique, but like formed the exact same way. So you can guarantee that I have my compliance house in order. So if you can prove to the governments that you have your compliance house in order, typically that means now your items will pass through the government process quicker than, say, somebody who doesn't, right? So at the end of the day, it's about getting my unit on the shelf so that somebody can go and buy that unit. So if I can prove that I have my compliance house in order, then typically it'll move through the supply chain quicker and get on the shelf faster so that they buy my product versus my competitors. And
And
hopefully
I
that's
think
a
that's
good.
what we all want. I think that's what we all want. I want to
Oh,
end with this one. So You say GTM is not just a compliance tool, it is a business enabler. That's a really good way of saying that. Do you want to elaborate that to round this up?
A business enabler. It's almost kind of back to the conversation or the kind of the analogy that I just said, right? It's a business enabler. So meaning my product's got to be on the shelf before the next guy to get bought, right? So if my compliance house isn't in order, then it's not going to get there, right? And I need to get it there faster than the next guy. And if I can do it cheaper, meaning I can like leverage free trade agreements or foreign trade zones, I can reduce the cost on my end. And that just makes more profit for me once my item gets bought on the other end.
Yeah. And I think that's a good roundup because I ultimately think a lot of people are not installing softwares or implementing softwares because, well, one, and this, I guess, rounds up our entire conversation is the prep is a lot. I mean, you can't just turn things over to you and say, hey, implement this so we can have better processes, right? That doesn't work. And secondly, it's the cost of it. But understanding, I think, first of all, you have to have the money. I get that. But second of all, you're going to get the money out of it, right? If you're doing it right, and which is why you kind of described the steps that you did, because if you're not doing it right in the first place, it might just do the opposite.
Correct.
But
Absolutely.
I'm sure you wouldn't even install it in that at the end of the day. But Ken, I have to round this up with that I will see you on, this will be out Monday. So I will already have seen you, which is incredible.
Wow.
And if our listeners are at ICPA, I hope, I'm not sure, I'm maybe listening to this later because I'm not sure that you will listen at ICPA. But if you do, please let me know. That's so fun. But I hope you focus on the conference and get to listen to this on your way back home for some more trade talk, which is insane. Not on my list, but okay. Choose your own poison. Anyways, I want to thank you so much for coming on. And, I love your entire team. They're always so great to talk to and doing such great business. So thank you so much for coming on, and I appreciate it.
Awesome.
And to our listeners, we will see you back next Monday. Bye.
All righty.